Now, I know that the moderator of our next session, Sanjib Kalita, has been known to hit the dance floor, probably already had his drink tickets maybe. But Sanjib is one of the founding members of the team at Money 2020 conferences. And his deep fintech knowledge, creativity, and irresistible personality have endeared him to the conference attendees over the past decade, earning him the title of Money 2020's Wizard. Yeah. We're going to ask the wizard to bring out his crystal ball and give us a preview of the top fintech trends for 2024 and beyond. But we won't leave Sanjib alone to the task. He will be joined by two fintech experts with some magic of their own. 2020 Georgia Fintech Hall of Fame inductee and co-founder of both Kabbage and Keep, Kathryn Petraila, and founder and managing partner of Vree Ventures, Vanessa Vreeland. Please join me in welcoming to the Atlanta stage, Vanessa, Kathryn, and Sanjib.
Thank you, everyone, and it is wonderful to be here. My name is Sanjib Kalita. I'm the wizard at Money 2020, and while I might be able to give predictions as a wizard, I know it's better, like when you have someone that's better at something, you bow down to them. So I will ask these two wonderful leaders to talk about some of their predictions. So if you could quickly introduce yourselves, that'd be great.
I thought the introduction was perfect, Kathryn.
Okay.
I would say you know about my background, but we started a new company called Keep. We sold Kabbage to American Express in 2020 and started a new company last year called Keep, focused in the compensation and payroll space.
Okay.
Great, and I would just add that I recently left a corporate venture environment and started my own fund, Vree Ventures, so excited to be here.
Well, that's super exciting. And let's see, why is this not, no. These slides are not working. Can we advance the slides? Or, yeah. Well, in any case, so actually the first slide that I had was an image of different types of weather. So we had something that we had a picture of like a hurricane. We had a picture of like, there we go.
We're getting close.
All right, and is this?
Is it ironic that this is happening to you of all people?
Yeah.
I think it might be.
It is ironic, but it's sort of like you just sort of power through, because things never work according to plan, which is. Sort of a bit of like, the weather theme, and so like right now where we're at, like from a startup, for example, like startup funding perspective, like where are we, like what's the weather like? Is it, some of the things that I've heard is that like if you're early stage, it's still pretty good, later stage, it's tougher. Obviously, like if you're doing certain things like Gen AI, it's like it's sunny days, whereas like things that, for example, like lending, or might be a little bit more overcast. Like how would you describe the weather in terms of fintech right now?
As the investor, I think you should.
Sure. So I've heard more than one person say we're in a funding winter. and that funding has been slow for the majority of the companies. And I agree with you, Sanjib, there have been a number of investments occurring at the earlier stages, but at the Series B and beyond, it's been really, really slow. And a lot of VCs are coaching their companies and their CEOs on how to kind of make it through until the weather changes to a little bit more favorable weather so they can raise a priced round. So I think you're seeing a lot of interim unpriced rounds. You're seeing a lot of focus on saving operational expenses and not so much on revenue growth at all costs. I will say though, at any time you have an environment like this, the haves and the have-not start to emerge. So there are great companies with great business fundamentals that are later stage that are going to market and doing great at their valuations and their rounds. I think it just kind of depends on where you were and where your business was.
My thoughts on this are kind of funny because we started Kabbage in 2008 in the shadow of the global economic crisis, and literally for 10 years we answered the question from every possible debt investor that was, how are you going to handle a downturn? What are you going to do in a downturn? Nobody said, how are you going to handle a pandemic? Because nobody thought about that. And then we're like, okay, well, finally, the downturn is coming. We've been waiting for it. We were all just like, can we please have a recession already so we can stop answering this question? And then even in a pandemic, it didn't happen yet. So, and now there's still all this uncertainty and instability. So it's really hard to make predictions because we haven't had experienced these types of, conditions previously in a, rising rate environment, and there's just this confluence of factors that I think make it really difficult. However, great companies are always going to be great companies, and a great time to start a great business is when other people aren't. So I would say if you want to start a company, now's a great time to do it.
Those are very wise words, and that I completely believe as well. So looking out to 2024, like how different do you see next year versus this year in what we just talked about?
I think it's going to be tremendously different. I think you're going to see a number of companies come to market for price rounds. I think you're going to see, if the stock market continues its upswing and the IPO window starts to open a little, I think you're going to see people interested in investing in venture again. There's a tremendous amount of money on the sidelines right now. And especially within the fintech space, I think I read recently that fintech revenues are just 2% of total US financial services revenues. And so there's a tremendous opportunity to continue to grow and disrupt. So I think that'll be the biggest difference is you'll see a tremendous amount of flow hit the market at once.
I think a prediction I would make that might be unpopular with respect to technology is around AI. At Kabbage, we worked with machine learning models. I've been working with machine learning models in financial services since the 90s. So this is not new technologies. It's very hard to do like real AI in financial services because it's a highly regulated environment. We've tended to use these machine learning models for things like decisioning and collections and fraud and marketing, and not to run a product all by itself because it's hard to do. So I think we're going to see these really interesting breakout companies that are able to find ways to use AI in the back end that create a lot of efficiency and help bring customers the best products at the best time. But it's not going to, on its face, feel like ChatGPT or anything like that.
Okay. No,
I agree with that. I think, I think what's interesting is everyone says, the first kind of wave of fintech was defined by payments. And now the next wave's going to be defined by B2B and B2BX, whether it's to another B or to C. And I think as you look within what that means, you're going to see a lot of infrastructure, and within that infrastructure, that financial infrastructure, a lot of AI as well. So I agree with you. I think you'll continue to see a lot of that next year.
Actually, this slide has some examples of technologies from the past. So, for example, you have the Model T, a technology that literally changed a lot of, this way society works. I included the microwave because microwaves came from military radar technology, and so ironically, it's one of the most used military radar technologies is in the kitchen. and then the LP player, because that was a technology that sort of went out of favor and now is like in fashion again. And then finally the Segway, this, a technology that rationally could have found a market but never did. And I wanted to, I put that up there just as a bit of like a thought stirrer, or just like any ideas of like, are there any, do you see any like LPs in fintech, like something that has become passé but that's gonna come back into fashion, or actually any of those examples, that.
So coming from a large financial institution for the bulk of my career, we spent a lot of time talking about accounting ledgers and accounting back-end systems for banks and troubles with making corrections. And so I think that technology is passé, and as we start thinking about distributed ledger technology, I think that will really revolutionize the way, in the same way people listen to music when CDs and now MP3s came out, change the LP. I think distributed ledger technology will really change the way banks operate at their very foundational core.
I think I might say the Fed. That's, we have payments technologies because of the work, frankly, that happened in the Atlanta region in the 50s, building what is now ACH. And I've said for a really long time, and I would like to at some point be right, that there's this opportunity to sort of disintermediate all of these established players, companies like Visa and MasterCard, folks who, all the payment processors, sorry to all y'all in that sector right now, using something like FedNow technology, real-time payments that can happen between individuals and individuals between, which is kind of like Zelle, but I think we all know that's clunky. But something that makes the movement of money free and easy, and that's exactly what cryptocurrencies, I think, we're hoping to do, is to make the movement of money free and easy along the lines of what we have in Europe. So from my perspective, I feel like the Fed has an opportunity to come back from obscurity, when it comes to payments, and make something really dynamic and inclusive happen.
No, it's a very interesting point you bring up about some of the old players and like, so for example, how about like something like Apple Pay, or what's sort of what do you guys think about Apple Pay?
Well, I think Apple in general will continue to invest in fintech technologies, and will continue to blur the line between technology and financial services company. But I think, Kathryn is right. In terms of moving payments, we've kind of figured it out from a P2P perspective, but from a B2B perspective, there's still so much that can be done. And when I think about how you can embed finance into tangential sectors like healthcare or supply chain management, there's a huge opportunity there for fintech to really kind of meld into other sectors. So I see companies like Apple continuing to lead the forefront on the consumer side. It'd be great to see them do more on the business side, but maybe that's something more that Microsoft would be akin to focus on as opposed to Apple.
I think it's happening with Apple, actually, because now that a merchant can accept a payment with the phone,
that's a great point.
It may not be something that's great for Walmart, but it could be great for smaller businesses, and where I feel like it's almost like there's a target directly on Square's head or Block's head. For that particular type of payment technology, I think that they're moving in that direction, and they make it such a great experience. It's so easy to use, and I think that's really an important part. It's kind of like Zelle. I realize that we can move money with Zelle and Venmo and PayPal, but like I said, in other countries, it is so much easier to just get money from point A to point B, and I think Apple is really focused on making that process better.
No. So on that point, like I spent 9 years at Citibank and Citicards, so after which I thought, look, I know payments, and then I left and joined TX via a fintech startup, realized I didn't know payments, and then we sold our company to Google, working on Google Wallet, and I realized, no, I didn't know payments, and then started Money 2020, and so I've always found it to be very informative to sort of open your eyes. And like, so like, are there any places you guys get your signals from to like, for example, that comment you just made, and actually even thinking about like B2B, is it conversations with people? Is it, you know, travel? Is it how do you keep up?
I think it's a little bit of all of the above.
So much reading.
So I was going to say we do so much reading. But talking to people too, and one of the reasons I started Vree Ventures, and we're female-centric, we are inclusive, but are really looking to support female entrepreneurs. It's because I was meeting so many female entrepreneurs in the B2B technology space who weren't getting funded, and they were great businesses. And then I started to do some research and discovered that inefficiency in the market where you have 51% of the US population receiving less than 2% of the VC funding. You're like, there's an opportunity here. And so I think it's a combination of just anecdotal things that come up, typically are trends once you start digging a little bit deeper, in my experience. But
And so like are looking out to 2024, like are there any technologies that you think are you expect that, well, I know that you mentioned some DLTs, but like anything that we haven't talked about, any technologies that we haven't talked about that should be on some of our audience's radar?
We were talking about technology companies. So like now if you go to Whole Foods, you can pay for your order with your palm. I think you'll see more biometrics embedded into technologies, which could be really interesting. And how that could change just the way we not only travel, but pay for goods and services. I think that'll continue to evolve.
Yeah.
I lost my wallet this summer. I was in London, and I misplaced it. I got it back like 6 weeks later. But I went for 6 weeks without a wallet. I only used my phone for every single thing, and it was remarkable. And once I got home too, it wasn't just in Europe. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. I don't actually have to have a wallet. And I think, you know, you can get to that point with your hands. It's not so great to me for the providers themselves. Like, I don't think payment companies make more money. I don't think Amazon necessarily makes more money because you're using your hand. I think it's the other applications for that that I don't often think about. Like, I was able to add my Georgia driver's license to my Apple Wallet for travel. So when I go through the airport, if I'm asked to show my ID, I can just pull it up on my phone, and that works. I think there are these other, you know, life kind of changing and easing applications that come out of it.
So actually moving on to our ecosystems and players. So I have 3 images here. These are all bands from the 80s. You have like a heavy metal, hair metal, you know, something that was like really cool and might have lost some of its cool now. Then you have hip hop that was cool back then and has gained cool. And then you have sort of a British band that's like sort of bringing more of a global element to it. And this is more sort of to think about like the ecosystem right now. Are there any ecosystem players that are cool right now that are going to lose their cool, or vice versa, something that's going to be really cool, or even like, you know, for example, Kathryn, like, you know, some of the wild cards from different places that might have an impact on our markets, and any from an ecosystem perspective, like any predictions for 2024?
Maybe at a higher level, I'm really looking forward to Fintech being a little less cool, so valuations come down.
I thought it was less cool right now. I've seen them drop. Not enough for you, I know.
Yeah, no, but continuing to be less cool. That's an interesting question. Nothing is coming top of mind right now, but I'll give it a little bit of thought. I don't know if there's anything top of mind for you in terms of that perspective.
I think I would put it through the lens of some of the companies that are still viewed as like fintechs, new emerging companies like Stripe or PayPal or Adyen or some of these other big companies that we still think of as being tech companies that have tens of thousands of employees and, you know, really complicated businesses. These are the businesses that are now ripe for disruption. And we don't think of it that way. You don't think, well, oh, I'm going to be a Stripe killer. Well, that's going to happen. Even Jeff Bezos said one day Amazon's going to file for bankruptcy. Like, all so who knows what'll happen to those companies, but I do believe that newer technologies will come in and make it better and cheaper, because especially with payments, there are just so many hands in the process, taking a penny here and a penny there out of it. So I think we're seeing compression, and ultimately, which is why I keep talking about Fed now, ultimately, I feel like you take all those hands out, and that's when you kind of get to a great place, and we're not close to that yet. So I think there's going to be more disintermediation.
Like, how about from even like within fintech, like there's obviously many different like sub-markets or markets, if you will. Like anything that is not cool that will become cool in 24?
I think infrastructure plays are going to become a lot more cool. I think getting deep within the financial systems and streamlining infrastructure is going to be extremely interesting. I think continuing to embed finance and other applications is going to be really interesting. And I think ChatGPT, you brought it up a little bit earlier. I mean, the stuff that's really out there, I think we'll continue to develop use cases for, and there might be more products and companies built around that. I think innovation and, as you said, disruption always is going to happen. So whether it's within payments or beyond payments, I think that there is a lot of opportunity for continued improvement for fintechs within the financial services industry.
I think about democratization, and it's a word we use a lot, and it means something different to everybody. But for me, 90% of all the jobs in the world are service jobs. They are hourly, paid hourly. They are lower wage jobs generally, and those people have less access to mainstream financial services, and they pay more than people, with 20 times as much money as they have to do simple, basic things. So I think, the new technology has an opportunity to help continue to bring not so much people into the fold. I think most people are using transacting in some digital way, but just to make it easier and more cost effective. And I think this is an exciting thing for me when I think about something AI could do, is help people make the best possible decisions about their personal cash flow. I think that's where everybody struggles, because it happens to all of us. You have a moment, you're like, oh no, I'm not going to be able to pay this bill. What am I going to do? How am I going to handle it? And it's at that moment that we all make terrible decisions. So, if finding a way to get in front of it somehow using technology, I think could be really exciting.
I love that. I love that. I think that's a great.
Yeah, I think we'll see a lot more on the B2B side, as I mentioned before. Like, global trade isn't going anywhere, and the ability to track your supply chain, pay and ensure your supply chain on its way to you, I think there's just a lot of opportunity there that has not really been fully developed yet. And so I think there's going to be quite a bit on the B2B side as well, especially within that globalization of companies and how they operate. Because right now, unless you're a top 3 money center bank, you need corresponding banking relationships in other countries in order to send money overseas for your clients. And there just has to be a different, better way. And some companies have begun to scratch the surface of that at the SMB level or the SME level. And Sanjib reminded me that we talked at Money 2020 with the founder of Vree, who has a cross-border payment B2B solution like that. But I just think you're going to start to see things like that at much greater and higher scale.
This next slide has Madonna, Bruce Springsteen, and Prince, and 3 artists that I think sort of talk about, they have different strategies, if you will. For example, Madonna was able to reinvent herself with fashion, with every single trend. Bruce Springsteen sort of had a bit of a core message that he sort of just powered through the decades. And Prince, I think, created the future that he wanted to be in, and eventually the world came around to him. Be it in either companies you're investing in or companies you're on the board of or leaders that you are advising, looking out to the future, is there any one of these that you think is better than the others, or what's sort of, or even you personally, how did you think about it?
I think about banks. When we talk about what's fintech, nobody thinks that banks are fintechs, and they are. They may not do it as well, but they're fintechs and have been for a long time. And at the end of the day, at least for now, if you want to use money, or you want to store money, or you want to give money to somebody else, it pretty much is going to go through a bank. So banks are a really important part in the US, especially of our infrastructure for money movement. And so I feel like they have done an okay job at trying to keep up with what people need. I think you saw it happen during the pandemic, especially when banks were like, holy shit, I have got to make sure that my customers can use their mobile apps to do all the things they need to do. I talked to this small business owner, and I know we're running out of time, but I'll tell it really fast. He banks with my same bank, and I won't say who they are, but they are in the Southeast. And that business owner was not able to make mobile deposits on their business account via their mobile application. And it was just, and he couldn't go to a bank because they weren't open. So, but I think, they figured it out, they got around it. I think banks are like the Madonna, they keep putting on new outfits.
I love that. That's awesome, Kathryn.
I love it. So the Prince of Things, I would say, those would be companies today that maybe incorporate ESG with payments, and I feel like they've kind of created this marketplace, and it's really important to younger buyers, but I think that that's super interesting in how ESG will continue to interface with fintech. But I think you've got like Bill.com is a great Bruce Springsteen. I mean, it went public early and it's rocking out at 20 times, revenue and earnings still, and it's doing great. So I think irrespective of which camp you fall in, it's not a particularly bad place to be. You're going to be successful irrespective.
Yeah. No, and I think we're sort of getting towards the end of the session here. So. Any sort of final predictions or thoughts for 2024?
Even though valuations have come down significantly within fintech, I think it's, kind of come of age, but it's not going anywhere. It's not close to maturity. It's still in a young infancy stage, and I think it'll continue to grow in an exciting way, and I'm excited to be part of it all.
I cheated, I looked at my notes just now because I knew there was one thing that I hadn't said yet. I'm going to go out on a limb and say there's going to be another FTX-like debacle.
That's very, very, very scary to think about, but you're probably right. I think if I had to make a prediction for next year, I think that. Actually, I think all of us, we see early stage startups right now, I look at them like, that's such a cool idea. And I'm thinking, a year or two, everybody's going to be all over this. And I'm sure we all know some of these companies so there will be a lot more excitement ahead. That's my prediction. And so I want to thank you both for joining me on this session, and thank you everyone in the audience for joining us and listening to us.